Thank you. Good morning. It is time to visit today about considerations on confinement facilities for cows. My name is Alfredo DiCostanzo. I'm a beef cattle specialist at the University of Minnesota, and we're speaking today about managing beef cows and confinement for the series the University of Nebraska is putting together. Our outline today looks like this. We'll be talking about the design options that are out there for cow-calf operators, build and design considerations, and lastly on the value of manure. On the design options, we'll spend time looking at the options that are out there and what the labor and other inputs are and where these designs fit better with the climate in our country. Then I'll spend some time on costs. This will be an assessment of what the total yardage cost will be for a cow-calf operator, considering either an option of an open lot or a manure pack building. And then lastly, what other benefits can we glean from applying manure that cows will generate in these confinement facilities. To facilitate the discussion, let me introduce this South Dakota State University Opportunities Farm. As you can see on this aerial photograph. There are three facilities, as you will see there. The middle facility you will recognize as an open lot, common in the western states for cattle feedlots. And by the way, this is a cattle feedlot. We're just using it to make some considerations on cow confinement. Off to the right happens to be the west on the photograph. It will be what is called as an Iowa design barn, where cattle have access to a shelter where the bunk is housed, and then they also can spend time outside on the yards, as you can see there. Off to the left and towards the lower left corner of your screen, you will see a facility that's a total confinement, and it's a very intense facility that is being utilized in southwest Minnesota for cattle feeding. I will spend a little time on each of these facilities and trying to make some assessments of what we would do if we were utilizing these facilities for cow-calf operations. So what I've decided to do is, based on the literature coming out of the University of Nebraska and North Dakota State University, is I've allocated approximately 32 pair for each of the pens, as you can see on the open pen design. This yields a square footage per head of 688 square feet. This permits a 30-inch linear space per cow. The recommendations out there are that cows should have from 28 to 36 inches of bunk per head, or per pair in this case, and this design appears to meet that minimum. This is just a panoramic of what an open lot would look like. Now let's spend time on a Bedpack confinement facility. This is the total confinement facility, as you saw towards the east side of the photograph that we previewed earlier. Again, if we accommodate 32 pair in any of these pens, those pair will have 112 square feet per head with 30-inch of bunk per head. As you will now recognize, we've intensified the stocking rate on this facility, which is the expectation when the costs of the building are such. For a reference, the University of Minnesota data from back in the 70s for dry lotting cows, they maintain lighter weight cows at about 100 square feet per pair. And we'll get back to that information here shortly. This is just a commercial design, monoslope building, very common to feedlots in southwest Minnesota and eastern South Dakota. Moving on to what I believe is an excellent combination of facilities, and this would be the partially covered pens, as they call them in places. These are called the Iowa barns. The reason for that is that in Iowa, permitting is somewhat simpler if cattle are permitted to go outside on a loafing facility, like you can see here from the southeast corner of the facility in South Dakota. Once again, I have accommodated 32 pair in each of these pens, yielding 537 square feet per head, with 80 feet of bunk space to yield about 30 inches of bunk per per pair. And again, I keep saying per head, but it is per pair, a cow-calf operation. This would be the old design facility. I'm not recommending that people build this type of facility. I just want to demonstrate what the University of Minnesota had back in the 70s. Creep area on the upper right corner of the screen, which amounts to about 14 square feet for calves, to have their own area for feed and water and lay in a nice thick bed pack away from the cows. Behind it is a concrete area, about 42 square feet, where cows can be kept indoors away from the elements, and continuous access to another 52 square feet to the left of the facility. That is totally concrete, and the bunks would be flanking either side of that facility at a rate of 36 inches per cow, or per pair in this scenario. So these pens also contain about 30 head or 32 head for those operations back in the 70s for the University of Minnesota. And those cows, you may remember, might be about in the range of 1,100 to 1,200 pounds. So we believe newer stock and weight, more closer to 120 square feet may be necessary at the minimum for maintaining cows in this type of facility. This is a diagram of the same building. Now, as you can see here from the east side, the creep area would be the open area, as you can see through to the other barn. This is a view from that same building from the southwest, demonstrating the loafing area with the concrete bunk access to the south, and then the creep area would be where that open door is. This is just demonstrating the same facility on the concrete loafing area, a hay feeding rack, and you can now see to the inside of that facility is an area where the cows can escape the elements. And this would demonstrate the creep access for calves. That heavy oak fence you see to the right will permit calves to get away from cows, rest in their own comfortable spot, and also have access to water and some creep feed. This would be the same area just behind it, still on the eaves, between the transition between the concrete area and the indoor loafing area. A similar facility is maintained at the University of Minnesota in Grand Rapids. You will see the barn to the left. That's where cows can get away from the elements, and they can come outside, eat either at a hay rack or forward to my right or to the right of the screen, where a bunk would be accessible for them to receive a complete diet. This is the same facility. Now you can see the bunks at the distance and cows inside staying away, in this case, from the summer heat. One of the features that our facilities have is what we call these aprons or sidewalks, where cattle can get around some of the dirt areas, and the bed pack would be in the middle of this facility, and cattle would walk on the concrete aprons or sidewalks. Now those must be maintained with scraping, especially in situations where the stocking rate becomes intense, or if there is inclement weather, rain or snow, these aprons need to be cleaned. A consideration for outdoor facilities is to put shades. That is of tremendous importance for baby calves, especially as they are growing in the early days after birth. So as we look at some of the things that these designs result in, let's spend a little time on a comparison between an open lot and manure pack facility. As you will see, the list of activities to be done on the open lot respond fully to inclement weather. In other words, we will scrape aprons, we will bed, we will remove snow, all pretty much in response to precipitation events, whether in the form of rain or snow. Manure removal on open lots happens once or twice yearly, and then at the same time we may spend some time reshaping mounds and apron borders so that we can maintain those facilities well every year. On the other hand, when we look at manure pack, more intense confined buildings, apron scraping, bedding will have to occur from 2 to 3 times weekly. It depends again on the stocking rate and the amount of precipitation out there. At feedlots where finishing cattle are maintained, these are common procedures in these manure pack buildings. So the viewer will recognize that the labor inputs and the bedding inputs will increase rapidly for a manure pack building. Manure removal in these operations under manure pack confinement buildings, we're looking at twice to 3 times yearly for that to happen. Not too different perhaps on the open lot. So move on to building design considerations and the impacts on costs. Before we move on to that, let's spend a little time talking about the space requirements for cows. And I have a list here, and some of it has been gleaned from my readings on University of Nebraska research and on the information from the University of Minnesota back in the 70s. So for cows, we expect them to have a comfortable facility and a confined facility from 100 to 120 square feet. If that facility has a confinement plus loafing, then we should have about 150 to 500 square feet per pair. And lastly, for open lots, we should consider a minimum of 500 to 800 square feet total for a pair. As we move to the breakdown, we should consider approximately a loafing space of 40 to 60 square feet in a confined facility and 55 to 75 square feet for a confinement facility with loafing, 250 to 350 for a for an open facility for loafing. The bunk space in all scenarios from 28 to 36 inches. Creep area from 15 to 22 in the confined facility, confined with loafing 22 to 32, and open facility 40 to 80 square feet for those calves to spend a little time away from mom and maybe allowing themselves to be calves for a little bit. If we move into the cost considerations, I won't spend too much time on this other than to say that the values were derived originally from data out of South Dakota State for the labor and operation of those feedlots or feedlot designs that you saw out of the Opportunities Farm. So I have prorated the value for a larger animal and in addition a calf. So the labor hours and equipment hours are prorated forward to consider a 1,350 pound cow and about a 450 pound calf on average. So the resulting values, these would be considered what I call non-feed yardage costs. And what these are is it would be daily rates per head to compensate for the value of the land that is taken away from, say, crops or other opportunity activities. The depreciation on the cost of building the buildings or the open lots, the labor and equipment, and the bedding costs to give us a non-feed yardage cost total at the bottom of those two columns as you see there. Relatively speaking, land use will be actually a very small cost per head per day. So many times we spend too much time wondering, if I take away $3,500 per land and occupy it with raising feedlot cattle or cows, how much is that going to impact my daily bottom line? Well, from the figures as you see on this slide, that's a pretty small value. Depreciation, on the other hand, is larger, about 20 cents per cow on the open lot and 45 cents per cow on the manure pack. Labor and equipment are also a larger value for the manure pack at 26 cents versus 12 cents for the open lot. And certainly bedding costs, because we have to keep those animals bedded in the manure pack building both in the summer as well as in the winter, looking at about 18 cents per cow per day on the manure pack versus 4 cents for the open lot. for a total non-feed yardage cost of 38 cents on the open lot and about 89 cents for the manure pack. So think about this in terms of what it takes to operate these dry lots throughout the year. This brings us right back to climate considerations. I believe that more confined facilities are more appropriate for cold and wet weather conditions, where greater density is required, leading to greater input of concrete, bedding, and labor. This will lead to greater operation costs. My calculations using $2.50 per pound of weaning weight, it will take 130 pounds of that weaning weight to pay for yardage. On the other hand, if we're in a drier and warmer weather, lower density required in those facilities requires lower input, looking at less concrete, less bedding, and less labor, where 55 pounds of the total weaning weight, if the weaning weight is paid at $2.50 a pound, pays the yardage. So approximately almost twice as many pounds will be required to be weaned out of a cow that is kept in a dry lot facility versus a cow that is kept in an open lot facility to make sure that those cows remain profitable. The part that is partly included in today's talk is the value of manure and the sustainability of these operations. What is helping this is the fertilizer price trends in the United States. As you can see here for anhydrous ammonia, phosphate, or potassium chloride, there's an increase in fertilizer prices that took place beginning in 2003 and 2004, and current prices for fertilizer continue to be elevated. We had a data set from various operations in southwest Minnesota, and these are the results. On the outdoor and pack labels, as you can see there, those are feedlot finishing cattle. On the far right, you see outdoor cows. Generally speaking, nitrogen, phosphate, and potash are values that are lower for outdoor maintained cows than they are for outdoor or pack maintained finishing cattle. We would suspect this because there is a tremendous amount of bedding that is going on in there, and also because the diets of beef cows are less rich than those of finishing cattle. Where the cows recover this value is in the output of manure. The output of cow manure would be almost 3 times larger than the output of a finishing steer, and that's where we get the nutrients coming back into the land. We will visit about this here in the summary. So there are various designs to consider for the operator thinking of moving cows into a dry lot situation. We have an open facility similar to many open lots where finishing cattle are maintained, or a manure pack facility in a confinement building with or without a loafing area. The overall input needed seems to be least for the open facility, moderate for the manure pack facility with a loafing area, and the most intense input would be needed for a manure pack facility without loafing. Greater input requires more pounds of weaning to pay for yardage costs. For a manure pack building, it may take 130 pounds of weaning weight to take care of yardage, and for an open facility, about 55 pounds. Certainly, climate decides these things, not so much whether we want to keep them inside or on an open lot. So wetter, colder climates will force operators to use more confinement, and drier, warmer climates will permit operators to keep cows outdoors on an open lot. What has helped the overall picture is increasing fertilizer prices. The caveat about this is that it's important that this manure can be utilized. If we're building open lots or confinement buildings in areas where that manure has no value because there are no crops, then this is really a burden on the operator. So where it helps is where we can utilize this manure right back on the fields. I've estimated about 11 tons of manure produced per pair per year from a manure pack building. This will contribute 136 pounds of nitrogen, 98 pounds of potash, and 73 pounds of 98 pounds of phosphate and 73 pounds of potash. What this means is that we can readily spread the manure from one pair onto 2 or even 3 acres of corn to meet the needs of phosphate and potash on a yearly basis. So this system of confining cattle tends to better align itself where manure will have a value as we utilize those nutrients and move forward into production of crops. With that, I will leave you with my contact information. Again, my name is Alfredo DiCostanzo. I'm at the University of Minnesota, speaking for the Managing Beef Cows in Confinement series, and there is my email address if you have any questions. Thank you very much.